Hello, Stephen Bedard here, and I want to address one of the most difficult topics for Christians, for people wrestling with a biblical faith, and that is the commands in the Old Testament, in certain cases, to kill every man, woman, and child. And it only happens a few times that is mentioned, but even a few times is a lot. And we have to wrestle with what that means. This is something that has come to mind recently for various reasons. One is that in a recent interview, prominent Christian philosopher and apologist William Lane Craig was asked about this and said that it was okay for that to happen in that particular time. But also we have another Christian apologist, less conservative, Randall Rouser, who I have interviewed a number of times for some of the books that he has written. He comes to a very different conclusion and talks about how we instinctively know that genocide is immoral. And so we have to find another way to address those passages, that it can't be that God would have commanded them to do something such as genocide. And my view of these things has evolved over time, and I'm just going to basically think out loud and to share a few thoughts of where I have gone in this journey. But I mentioned that there have been a number of reasons why this comes up now. Other reasons include some of the war that is going on, war in Ukraine, war in Gaza. And when we hear about not just the loss of soldiers, but the loss of civilians and of innocent women and children, these things should be getting us to ask some pretty hard questions about those particular passages in the Bible. And part of what goes on here is we have to decide, is it always immoral for people to commit genocide? Now you have to realize genocide is not defined as actually killing everyone of a particular ethnicity, but it could be the attempted killing of them, and also the desire to attack someone based on their ethnicity. And so we've seen numerous examples of that in the former Yugoslavia, in Rwanda. We have seen examples of this, and we instinctively, as Randall Rouser tells us, we instinctively know that that is wrong. And so we have to ask, is it possible that God would have commanded the Israelites to do something that was immoral? And this is a hard question, because we would want to say no, and yet some people will say, well, if God commands it, then that's an automatic pass. But that, of course, gets us to the EuphrO dilemma, which asks if something is immoral because it is wrong in and of itself, or because God says that it is wrong. And if that's the case, is then God bound by rules outside of himself? But if that's not the case, does that mean that God could choose anything and say, okay, this is okay right now? Is it possible if God would choose to say, command someone to torture a baby? Would that be okay? And you might say, well, no, God would never do that. And yet, if we didn't have those passages in the Old Testament, we would probably say, well, God would never choose to tell the Israelites to kill every man, woman, and child. And yet we have those passages. And so we are still stuck wrestling with that. And so there are only really a few options. One option is just to read it as it is and to say, well, whatever our thoughts on what is moral or immoral, whatever instinct we have about genocide, if God told the Israelites to do that, then that was fine. That was a moral act. And as those Israelite soldiers were killing little children, that was doing good because God had commanded it. So that is indeed one option. Another option that has often been put out there is that simply God never did command those things, which has its own set of issues because it looks like in the Old Testament that's what God is saying. So there are certain times where we can perhaps see that maybe a particular individual leader had decided they were going to do it, and it's recorded in the Bible, but that might not necessarily reflect what God wants. But there are other times where it seems like God is saying this is what you are supposed to do. But there's something attractive about that, and also something that is problematic as well. Another option that has been put out there is that it is exaggerated. And so what looks like in the Old Testament of Israelite soldiers going into a city and killing every man, woman, and child, and we think maybe of a city, perhaps of a couple of thousand people or whatever, so we would think quite a few people who are being killed. Some people have suggested that this is highly exaggerated. I believe that Paul Copan goes in this direction and suggests that what we read as cities here really are more garrisons. And while there may have been a couple of women, but very few children, that what seems to be happening, that there's a lot of military rhetoric that is being used in this in these passages, and I'm somewhat sympathetic to that. I think that there is quite a bit of exaggeration. I believe that a lot of people, perhaps in reaction to some biblical critics who would seem to deny any historicity when it comes to the Bible, have pushed back so far that they're afraid to see that there are other ways of using language, and there are figures of speech that perhaps are not to be interpreted quite as literally as we might be tempted to do. So that might be a part of the equation as well. The question I have to ask is it possible that God would have commanded the Israelites to kill every man, woman, and child? And were there significant numbers in that? Well, is it possible? Yes, God can do anything, and I acknowledge that, and I realize that no matter how uncomfortable that may make us feel, it is indeed possible. Do I believe that it is ever moral to commit genocide? If you ask what I really believe, it is no. I would say it is never moral to commit genocide, that it would not be moral for an Israelite soldier to kill a woman, civilians, little children, babies. I know some people would say, well, in terms of the children, no big deal, because they would just automatically go to heaven. Actually, the Old Testament doesn't talk about that. The Old Testament, actually nowhere in the Bible does it exactly say what will happen to babies when they die. But that's a question for another video. So we don't really know. Do I hope that babies go to heaven when they die? Yes, of course I hope that. We lost a child to miscarriage, and that is our hope. But scriptures don't say that. So to say that killing babies is no big deal because they are going to heaven, there's all kinds of problems with that. And not to mention that the people who would suggest that are also probably the ones most likely to protest outside an abortion clinic, saying that what is happening to babies in abortion is terrible, one of the worst things happening today. So I think we agree that there's no way in which it's okay for babies to be killed in warfare. So that's where I'm at. I don't believe that it is ever moral to do that. What I know of God as revealed in Jesus Christ is that God is love. I'm not denying that there is a place for wrath, nor am I a pacifist in which I would have to reject that God would ever use armies and warfare. I do believe that can be a part of the picture, and so I don't hold to complete nonviolence. I think that there is a place for war. I hate war, but I believe that it is something that happens, and that God has used. So I am not necessarily against that, but I really struggle with the idea of genocide and the killing of innocent women and children. And so, and it just doesn't seem to fit with the God that is revealed in Jesus Christ. But what then do we do with those passages? Well, I'm going to give you my answer here, and get a pencil and paper out to write down the answer that you have been waiting for. And that is, I don't know. I really just don't know. What my hope is that the reference to killing every man, woman, and child was simply rhetoric, meaning that they would kill all of the opposing combatants, but not actually women and children. I would hope that is the case. Is it possible that those passages are not reflecting historical events? It's possible. My faith is not based on what happens in Jericho or any of those other cities in Canaan. It's based on Jesus and his life and death and resurrection. But I don't know what to do with those passages. I have to conclude that I just don't have enough data to come to an understanding of how the God that's revealed in Jesus could command genocide. And is it possible that God did do that? Yes, it is possible, but I don't have the data for how that fits together. And I realize that's not what people want. People want a nice answer that explains everything, to say, this is just a myth that was created, or that's just the way God is. And if God wants to kill a woman or child, then God's welcome to do that. Yes, there are all kinds of books and articles and videos that are wrestling with this, but I don't think that we can actually answer. And so if a non-Christian was to ask, how do I worship a God who commanded genocide, I would have to say that I don't understand those passages in terms of how they reflect what actually took place at that time, and that my focus of my understanding is how God is revealed in Jesus Christ. Not that I unhitch myself from the Old Testament, as has been said of certain Christian leaders, but in those particular passages, I do not hang my faith on that, and nor would I reject the faith based on that. I just don't understand and know what was actually taking place. This might be completely disappointing for you, but I think that there's a place for epistemic humility to say that we don't always know things, and we don't have to have the answers, and we don't have to show how every piece fits together. So that's what I have to say about this, and I would love to hear your thoughts. How do you reconcile the God who is love, revealed in Jesus Christ, and Old Testament passages that speak of killing off the Canaanites? And one last thing, I find it very interesting that in the genealogy of Jesus that's found in the Gospel of Matthew, that Rahab is mentioned, one of only a few women that are mentioned. And Rahab was a Canaanite and a person who was living in Jericho. And not only was she an ancestor of Jesus, but one of the few women that actually gets mentioned in there. So that's what I have to say about this difficult topic. Please share your thoughts and visit me at my website, stephenjbedard.com. Thank you. Bye.